This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek FM at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
This is David A. Goodman, writer and consulting producer for Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Warp 5 on Trek FM.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, Boomers, to another episode of Warp 5. I am your host, Patrick Devlin. Join with me, as always, my good friend, Brandon-Shea Mutala. Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing good! I was hunting elephants and rhinoceros.
Oh, boy. Okay. So, there's that. Brandon...
There's a giant over there, and he's friendly.
Yes, big friendly giant. My name's Patrick, though. You can be a little nicer.
Not you, my friend over here.
I'm not even his friend anymore. Man. Okay. Brandon yelling about...
You are my friend, and you do things for me.
And you only listen to me.
Yes. While I play my bone flute.
With a broken neck. So actually, this is kind of what we will be talking about this episode. But before we get into that, Brandon, did we have any comments on the Babel Conference from our last few episodes?
Yes, we did. So, from episode 185, Archer should have served them bacon. We had a comment from Janet Lee on our thoughts for the Trip's attitude towards T'Pol that I had in the episode there. So Janet Lee said, Trip's passive aggressiveness towards T'Pol is nothing new, which is why I found E2 so frustrating. But if his depression seemed to come out of left field, blame Connor Trinneer. In a Blu-ray documentary, which I still haven't watched, I've got the Blu-rays, but I still haven't watched any of the bonus stuff.
Oh, man.
He said that he asked the writers to have him walk away because he felt that they yanked Trip's spine out. I don't know quite what that means. Indeed, it feels like they wrote this at the last minute. Do you agree with Connor? And why do you think Trip didn't reveal to Archer the real reason he was leaving? How you guys described the Trip-T'Pol relationship at this point is what I call not owning the angst. I don't have a problem with angst itself, but the execution is terrible when Bound resolves this faster than they brought on the depression. Don't pull the rug out from the characters only to give them an easy way out. So I agree with her. I think that Bound resolves way too quickly what they've tried to establish here, and they established this depression and him leaving the ship so quickly. And I think we said on the episode 2 that I really think the reason they got him off the ship was just so that they could have a way to bring him back on the ship and save them in Affliction and Divergence, which is the next 2 episodes. Because they wrote themselves in a corner, I think. They're like, look, we want to do this episode and we want to have this scene, and the only way we could do it is if somebody comes from the other ship, and we need it to be Trip. I think that was their determination, so...
No, but I did go back and forth with Janet about this, and I said the one reason why I thought that they made him not tell Archer is because they're such good friends, he figured Archer would talk him out of it, and that's why they wrote it that way. And then the other thing was about the spineless. She doesn't like the spineless comment because of she feels it's like them saying he's not a man, like it's a gender issue. But I don't find that to be true. That being spineless itself is Just that he has no form, he has no shape, he has no strength to stand up for himself, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, like it's a person who's weak and just gives in to people. That's what the term spineless means. I don't think it has anything to do with gender. Like women could be spineless as well as men could be spineless. So
yeah, right. It's just if you don't have a spine, you can't stand up. So you can't stand up for yourself. Right. It's how I take it. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, so I haven't seen that documentary. I haven't seen that behind the scenes stuff. Someday I'm going to get to those bonus features. Right now I'm overwhelmed because I'm behind on my Game of Thrones rewatch, because as of this recording it starts next Sunday and I've got like 2 seasons to watch by then, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it.
Oh, that doesn't sound like it's likely.
Yeah, I know. So, anywho, it's a rewatch. So I have only seen season 7 once, so I really want to rewatch it again before next week. So
gotcha.
Anyways, excellent. Well, thanks for the feedback, Janet. We really appreciate it. It's always nice to hear from you. But yeah, getting back to our topic and our weird introduction to the show, we're going to be doing movie night again tonight, and we're talking about Son of Frankenstein. So we're coming close to the end of the on-screen mentions for the movie nights movies. So we've got some fun ideas planned for how we're going to go and expand on that later on. But we did have a question for you guys, the listeners. Maybe you could provide some feedback for those that are listening along with movie night. So the next one we are going to do Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. We're just going to go ahead and assume that Tripp showed that as a part of the 4-part series, because I've never seen it, and it'll be fun. But after that, if you go to Memory Alpha as what's listed, they talk about Bride of Chaotica. And so I want to hear what the audience thinks we should do for that, if anybody has any feedback. I don't particularly just want to watch the Voyager episode Bride of Chaotica, because I don't particularly like it. So I was almost thinking we could do, like what are some of the space people that Captain Proton was inspired by? I don't know all their names, but one of those cheesy 30s cereals or whatever.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Instead, because then that's, the one timeline it's Captain Proton, but in our timeline it's Buck Rogers.
Right.
So maybe we could watch a Buck Rogers or something like that. So, or we could watch Duck Dodgers, like a bunch of Looney Tunes cartoons, right?
Yes, we could.
Instead, that'd be kind of fun.
And Marvin the Martian.
Marvin the Martian, I love it. So tell us, audience, what would you like us to do? Because it would be weird if we just watched a Voyager episode for our Enterprise podcast, right? But I guess we could. So let's hear from the listeners. Let's see what they want us to do for the Bride of Chaotica one. Or we could just skip it, because it's just, they don't even talk about it. It's just on a monitor. So if you're like, we could technically even just skip that one, because it is just on screen, and it's just as an on-screen appearance as an Easter egg. So technically we don't even have to do it. And then we would just move right on to The Exorcist. So, because that'll be the one after that. So let us know. Put us in the show notes for this episode. Tell us what you want us to do, or if you want us to just skip right ahead to The Exorcist.
Sounds good. So, I guess let's talk about Son of Frankenstein now.
Let's do it.
Okay, what do you think of this movie?
You know what? So I watched this last night, and I actually really enjoyed this movie. And it made me want to go back and rewatch both Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Because when Brandy and I covered Bride of Frankenstein, I didn't really enjoy it that much. There was some good stuff in it. But I remember when I've only seen Bride of Frankenstein like 2 or 3 times. And I remember the first time I watched it, I loved it. And I don't know if I'd seen it again in between, but when I watched it with Brandy, I'm like, man, this movie is just weird. So, I don't know, I might have missed something when I watched it that time. Because this one is like the 3rd one, and it doesn't seem like people would think this is popular. But I mean, even on Letterboxd, it's got a 3.5 average.
Yeah, so everyone I know that likes the Frankenstein movies has always said that Son of Frankenstein was their favorite. But
okay,
and I guess I could see that. I mean, I guess I'm not a huge fan of the Frankenstein movies in general. This one was definitely better than Bride of Frankenstein for me. I didn't get to record with you for that one because my computer had broken and I had a whole bunch of other things going on. But I did watch Bride of Frankenstein preparing for it, and I agreed with what you guys said. It was just a weird, odd movie. I didn't like Bride of Frankenstein really at all. But I found myself enjoying this one more than I have the other two.
I kind of did too. I really liked the idea of Igor being friends with Frankenstein's monster and him manipulating him with this twisted friendship into having him kill these people, and how they're all like, everybody thinks it's Igor, but Igor's always got this solid alibi of him playing this flute, right? So it's like, can't be me. I was playing the flute, right?
It is. It's creepy.
Everybody's like complaining at him, saying, "Shut that damn flute up!" Right?
Yep. So now they all know he's not the killer.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, first off, I found it interesting the way they decided to mold this story, the son of Frankenstein, because you have Frankenstein, right? Then you have the bride of Frankenstein, but it's really Frankenstein's monster's bride. But then the son of Frankenstein is actually the son of Frankenstein, who comes back from America, right?
And I loved how they dropped that like, what is it, that what's the word I'm looking for, that fan shade, where they're like, can you believe it? All these people are even just calling the monster Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even know what this is. Like, it's clearly a reference to the last movie, and it's clearly a reference to the audience, because most people think Frankenstein that is the name of the monster, and it's not. It's just the monster.
Right. It's Frankenstein's monster.
I thought that was really quite the tongue-in-cheek little joke there. I thought
that was pretty good. But I did enjoy. I was confused at first starting it, but I did enjoy, like, the townspeople were very against Frankenstein just because of his last name, and he was trying to battle back against, his father's legacy, and then, it turns out he just kind of does the same thing.
Yeah, he just does it again. Yeah, so they're like trapped. It's like the curse of the Frankenstein family or something like that. But he does come back to, I didn't quite realize, I don't think I caught it before, that the town that he lived in was called Frankenstein. But in this movie it is called Frankenstein. That's the name of the town.
Yes.
And so the people are upset because now they're just associated with this monster, and they're all like, tourists don't come here anymore, and our town is dying. But son of Frankenstein, Wolf, his name is Wolf, so Wolf Frankenstein, I don't know if that's like a reference to the Universal Monster series of movies or whatever, but he brings his wife and his kid to this castle, which is a really epic, awesome looking castle on the inside, and he wants to try and vindicate his father, because his opinion is that it's all the sidekick. At the time, it's not Igor, but it's the hunchback sidekick grabbing the wrong brain. He blames everything on the brain. Right. And he says, it's not my dad's fault, it's this other guy's fault for grabbing the wrong brain, which is, it's an interesting concept, because while we know now the study of the brain doesn't work like this, they're like, look, this is a human normal brain and this is a killer's brain. Like, it doesn't quite work like that, but that's what they were trying to go for at the time. So, continuing with that story, well, maybe if he grabbed a normal brain, the monster wouldn't have been a monster, and he would have been just like a big
teddy bear
dude named Bob.
Yeah, a big teddy bear. I mean, well, if you just watch...
Well, he was fluffy like a teddy bear in this one.
He was. If you watch the original movie, he's not really that much of a monster anyway, right?
No.
Like, he ends up killing the girl, but that was an accident, and no one should have known anyway, but whatever. Wrong movie. And, like, so by this one, now we have, like, a certified killer.
You're right.
Which we didn't have in one. That was, when that dummy was super dead, he wasn't a certified killer, but now, he's a hitman for hire on because he listens to his friend, which is an interesting concept, because
right,
I don't know if in 1939 this was like as big of a thing, that was, people understood that, but now if you go back and look at, like, I don't know, ID or whatever, and you see a lot of stories of people who killed someone because their friend wanted them to or something, or a lover manipulated them into it, or to get out of a marriage or something crazy,
Yeah. And that's what I really liked about this story. I liked seeing this. So you got this friendship of these two, like, I don't know what word to call them. Like Igor came back from the dead. Like, he was brought back from the dead. Basically, his neck broke, which he wouldn't be walking if his neck broke. But, we'll suspension of disbelief for a minute here.
I thought it was cool when he hits it. And it's like knocking on a door.
It's like, So did they install like a wooden neck for him or something?
Right. It doesn't make any sense. You know what? I leave that up to, I guess people had less knowledge of biology overall, the general public in 1939. So, whatever.
We got to file that under, we just got to go with it, and we'll file that under our neck cannon.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Neck cannon, there we go. But yeah, so nobody likes Igor. Everybody's upset at Igor because he was stealing dead bodies. And, I think it's funny that they brought him in for that mini trial, and they're like, "Are you stealing dead bodies?" He's like, "No." Yeah. They're like, "Don't lie to us or we'll kill you."
Yeah. And then they're like, "Well, we can't hang him again. He's already been hanged." And he was found, he was pronounced dead, and everyone else who's ever been pronounced dead is dead.
Right. Now, okay, so I wanted to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was a really interesting point that they made, where the judge on this thing is like, look, the guy was pronounced dead. That means the justice was served. If he came back to life, that's not our problem, and we can't stop for justice on this guy.
But the other guy made a really good point. If you commit another crime,
yes,
you should be put to death again.
Again, which is another very valid point. So,
like the judge's like, no, we can't hang him twice. I don't care if he kills 7 more people. Like, what?
You've been punished for the one crime. This isn't double jeopardy. You're not getting tried for the same crime twice here, okay?
Right. They're not just picking him up 6 years later and hanging him again for fun. Like this.
But that's what everybody else wants to do. They're like, if you're lying to us, we'll hang you again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They're just berating him on the stand. I don't know. There's some really great discussion, but I think that was the case with hangings. For some reason, I have this in my head though, where if somebody went to be hung, that's why they would test the rope with something heavy, right? They would test the rope with something heavy. The bag would drop, and if the rope snapped, they would replace the rope.
Right.
Okay. But if that guy then went to be hung and the rope snapped, they would consider that divine intervention, and then he would be let go. I don't know why I have this in my head, but I think I've heard this somewhere.
Now that you say it, yes. That sounds right. I mean, it doesn't sound right. That's a ridiculous way to do justice. But it sounds like that actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's because there's a Twilight Zone episode where that happened and the rope broke. So maybe that's why I have it. I think it's the episode Dust, where they go to hang a guy, and the guy sells him the strong rope. The rope breaks anyways. And they let him go because they're like, well, God must have intervened. And I think that's kind of what he's saying there, too. He says it's the devil that brought him back, but, whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not that important what's the reason he's back, but yeah. In my head, I kind of have that same, like if the death penalty fails, then you've skirted death,
Yeah.
And I have that in my head for not just hangings, like for everything.
So you think if they go to electrocute somebody, then...
because
I think with electrocutions, like they check the heart, and if it's still beating, they zap them again.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. But I have heard stories, and they're probably, urban legends of like them going to throw the switch and the power going out in the building at the time.
Yeah.
So then that's it. We couldn't electrocute him, so he's free, which is a ridiculous way to do justice. Like, oh, he's a serial killer. He's killed hundreds and hundreds of people. Oh, there's no power. All right, let him go. Oh, no one plugged it in. We should have checked that first. But
yeah.
For some reason, I have it in my head that if the way to execute someone fails, then they're just let free. I'm sure it has some urban legend somewhere that I probably should have looked up before talking about this for 10 minutes, but...
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I mean, it's an interesting idea. I liked some of the stuff that was brought up in this movie quite a bit. I thought it was a pretty interesting film. Quite a lot of stuff to talk about. So we've got the peril that this son is put in, right? But which is who I was doing at the start. Like, we had this really cute little boy in this movie, right? Who was just absolutely cute. He was totally cute.
Yeah, he was going hunting with his gun early on, which was a good scene. And The only thing about this family that bothers me is that, I don't know, the wife bothers me.
Okay. Why is that?
She's just so afraid of this castle that it gets annoying at some point.
You think that, well, see, the way that I interpreted it is that she's afraid of the legacy, right, and she's afraid of what her husband is turning into. That's how I interpreted it. So
yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. I think it's just the fact that, like, every conversation ends with her saying something about being afraid of the place. Yeah. Annoyed me. You know what I mean? Like, I think they just kind of harped on it a little more than I'd like. But that's storytelling in 1939, so...
Yeah, this was in 1939. One of the things that I thought should bother me, but didn't bother me, like, was the scene where Frankenstein's playing the darts and that inspector is in there. And he's getting all agitated and upset because everybody's accusing him, right, and blaming him for the deaths, blaming him on his father's experiments, and he's getting all defensive and upset. But that's exactly what's going on, right?
Yes.
So, but it worked for me. I liked the fact that he was denying it and getting agitated because he knew that was going on, but he was still trying to maintain the defense because his original idea to come there was to defend his father.
Yes. No, I thought that worked really well because, like you said, at this point, his original intent was not to continue his father's work. His original intent on coming was to save his father's name and whatever, you know. Right. But as this goes on, he becomes more and more like his father. So, but he's already dug his heels in, so to speak, and now he's going to maintain that lie, and no one can know he's doing this anyway, you know. So, you know, for him to keep getting agitated, I've said it a lot. When it comes to, we'll take something that's a little less important, but baseball, right? When all the players were getting blamed, oh, he did steroids. Like, if I was someone who was or was not using steroids, I'd be screaming from the mountaintops, it wasn't me. Because when you say nothing, you look guilty.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I read this scene. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to try and shout down the fact that they all think he is doing it by just being louder about not doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I liked it. It worked for me. It worked for me quite a bit. I liked the guy that played the son of Frankenstein. I thought he was very good.
Yes.
And I thought this was a very interesting story. There's a couple things that I blame on 1939 storytelling. One of the things that didn't quite work for me was when, like, the fact that this castle was sitting over top of a sulfur pit. Like, I don't remember that from the other two movies. But, like, with how close this lab was that was sitting right over the sulfur pit, like, that sulfur you would smell that in the house.
Yeah. Yeah, they just kind of ignored it.
Yeah, and then, like, he's just sitting there working in this sulfurous environment. Like, what has he got? No mask? Like, no breathing mask?
Well, he walks over.
I understand it's 39. I'm making a joke.
Forget that. He walks over to it the first time, and you're like, oh, sulfur. Like, you would have opened, even if you don't smell it outside the building. There's no roof on the building either anymore. But as soon as you walked in, you'd be like, oh, man, that's sulfur.
There's like eggs in here.
Yeah, like. Yeah. And it was the first health spa.
The first health spa. Which you know, like those types of hot tubs, you know, there are places like that, like natural mineral resorts, right, yes, where they would have a natural spa because they believe these minerals have healing properties and whatnot. So I would buy that. I just think it's weird that this is so close to the house and they wouldn't smell it. But the other thing that bothered me for 1939 storytelling was when he goes there and then Igor drops that boulder on him and he's like, hey, you come down here. And Igor comes down. He's like, why did you do that? He's like, I thought you were going to kill me. Yeah. That's what Igor says. And he's like, what? That's ridiculous. And Igor's like, oh, well, why don't you follow me down here into this creepy passageway? And the guy's like, sure.
Yeah, that I just chalked that up to that's how they told stories.
Yeah.
But it was a little ridiculous. Like, you know, that whole scene was like, it just looked like a bad 30s movie. I mean, like, he drops a boulder and he's like, sticks the gun, hey, I got this. Like, oh, man, just shoot him.
Yeah. So a couple of things didn't work in the film. Like, there's some definite weak spots in it, but there is some really good stuff. The other really weak spot for me was the end. So, like, I liked that the son was put in peril because it kind of defeats that trope of, the woman's always in peril or whatever. I liked how Wolf Frankenstein, like, swung in and knocked Frankenstein into the sulfur pit, and then we had that, precursor to Terminator 2.
Right, yeah.
So we got everything short of the thumbs up in the air.
Right.
When he was burning. But then it cuts immediately to him leaving on the train saying, okay, here's the keys to the castle and the deed, and you guys do whatever you want with it. Bye, take care. And they're all like, yay.
Yeah, it was a little weird. A little, I do like that the monster is dead, kind of, maybe, sort of, at this point.
Until the next movie.
Yeah, until they feel like revising him. But, yeah, it is, that's just the way it happened back then, I guess. I mean, I haven't watched enough 1930s movies to know if just jumping forward in the story to going home is a normal thing. Like,
yeah, movies at this era, the climax happened. There was one more scene sometimes, and then it was done. Like one more quick scene that was like a funny scene or a happy scene, and then the movie's done. Like movies were done quick in this era. That's a very common thing.
Yeah. Then I mean, I can't really. Like you said, I guess it doesn't work for me, but that's because I'm watching it with an eye from this era.
Right.
And it's not fair to judge that by these standards if that was the norm.
Yeah. So, anywho. I don't know, but I mean, other than that, I thought the movie was a lot of fun. I thought it was great for a third movie. I was really impressed with it. I really liked the set design. I loved the set design of the castle. I thought it looked great.
When they were inside the castle, I like the two big balconies and sitting at the table. I loved the look of that. I even loved the set design, even on the lab with the roof caved in, and when he went inside, it was just mangled inside and everything. I really dug the sets. Yeah. And you know what I noticed too on this one? Now I get it because technology's limited. So in the first one, sometimes you could look at it and you'd actually see it wasn't meant to be watched at such good definition televisions, so you could see the streaks in the backdrops and stuff. I didn't notice that this time. I mean, they might have been there, but I noticed it watching Frankenstein. I did not notice it here.
Okay, yeah. So you think the site were painted better?
Yeah, or they filmed it at a better angle or something, so it just felt more. Because when you see the streaks, it kind of takes you out of the moment.
Yeah.
You kind of feel, they're on a set, right? I mean, I know they're on a set, but you don't want to think about it. And this movie, I didn't notice that, so I thought the sets were really well done.
Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things that, I don't know if this was the case or not, I didn't look it up, but the guy that Frankenstein killed on the horse and carriage looked like the father of the little girl that died in the first movie.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
I don't know if it was or not. I should probably do some research. I should probably have done that ahead of time. But to me, it looked like the father from that movie, and I'm like, oh, that's a really interesting callback then, if that it is.
Yeah,
at least he was close enough looking that's who I thought it was.
Right, and that's horrible for that family, huh?
Yeah, and then like the way that Frankenstein tried to hide the murder. Again, it's showing that the monster's evolving and becoming intelligent because he broke his neck, he threw him underneath the cart. And then had the horses drive over him.
Yes, yeah, and then that was the scene right after he had to leave the dinner, right? The inspector had to leave.
No, the dinner was later because he got called to that murder. That's why he left the dinner, was to go investigate that murder.
Right, that's what I mean. So this was the murder that he had to leave for, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I found it interesting because he said something about like marks on the neck, and he's like, "We won't know until you have an autopsy." Like, I just thought that was a cool little back and forth there.
Yes,
and the scene they made, like they had a woman, I guess the guy's wife or whatever, in the room there, and when he like lifts up the blanket, like she goes into hysterics, which was it's heartbreaking, but it's kind of cool, because I know he's not really dead in real life, but
right, but it's his wife, so she'd be very upset by that.
Right. It's just a good scene,
Yeah. Then the only other thing that I felt was weird, and it was an interesting character trait, but it felt weird at first. The first couple of times we saw it was this investigator with this wooden arm.
No, like, why'd they choose that?
So, yeah, it was a very interesting defining trait for this character because, so when he was a boy, apparently the monster ripped his arm out, right? Ripped it out of his socket as a little boy. And so now he's got this wooden arm, and he couldn't get into the military, so he's just this investigator, and he's kind of sad and upset by this. But it just, because it's not a real arm, like, he had to manipulate it. So when he wanted it lifted, he'd have to lift it himself.
Right.
And when he got to the house, he was okay. So the first time we saw him, he was just sitting down, and his arm was really straight. But when he gets to the house, is the first time that he has to move it. And I've never seen this in a movie before, and it looked humorous. So I'm like, is this supposed to be a comedic element? But they weren't playing the character for comedic, so it threw me off at first. But then I thought it was a really fascinating character trait for the inspector. And I mean, like, it was weird because they were doing funny things with it, because when he was playing darts with Frankenstein, he put the darts in his wooden arm, right? Because he couldn't hold them. So he, like, stabbed the darts into his arm and then went to throw the darts, and he would take them out of his arm. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know any amputees or anything like this, but I don't think that most of them, like, would call attention to it by, like, jabbing stuff into it, like, all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I know one guy who has from his knee down, he played paintball, actually, oddly enough, with me, tournament paintball. But, no, I don't think he would, like, stab darts if he had an arm. But the other weird thing was, I just found it odd that they even did this in general. Like, I don't know. I guess they just wanted to give him a backstory with the monster, but...
Also, it was to give a backstory because Frankenstein's son is like, come on, who's even seen this guy do anything? Because, again, like, if you watch the first movie, he doesn't really do anything bad, right?
Right. He's chased simply because, you know, of a really horrible accident, but...
He's different. So in this, it gives it a story for, like, no, okay, this monster ripped my arm off.
I guess. Okay.
So, to show that the monster is evil. And, it's the manipulation of Igor manipulating him that has turned him evil. So
right, it's all Igor's fault.
Right, it's all Igor's fault.
You know.
Stupid Igor.
Igor and his wooden neck.
His wooden neck. Excellent. Well, I don't think I have anything else to add to the film. I think we've covered pretty much everything I want to talk about. Is there anything you wanted that we missed, Patrick?
No, I think that about covered. Oh, you know what? One scene I did like, actually, before we move on. It's not a big scene. It's not an important part of the movie or anything either, really, in reality. But when they're going back and forth about the ladder into the sulfur pit.
Yeah.
And Igor's like, it's a cave. He's like, a cave? He's like, cave. He goes, where's the cave go? It's just a cave. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I like that scene. Like, it was just funny to me. I don't know. I don't get why I like that scene so much, but I really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah. It's fun watching these guys because, you know, people like Karloff and Lugosi, like, they just ate the scenes up, you know? Like, they just gave it their all. Like, Lugosi does a very good job in this as Igor. I mean, Lugosi's primarily known as Dracula.
Right.
Right? But like, all of these guys were in all of these monster movies. Like, Karloff was the Mummy, you know, Lugosi was in some of the Wolfman movies. He was probably in some of the Mummy movies as well. Like, these guys just, they cross-pollinated the genre. You know, they were in, like, all of the movies for, like, all of these series. And, you know, there's 6 primary Universal horror film series. There's Frankenstein, Wolfman, and Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Mummy, and The Invisible Man are, like, the 6 primary Universal horror series. So, but they're kind of all over these actors. And Lugosi was so rich, and he did some great stuff. Like, on Warp 5, when we had Keith R.A. DeCandido on, we talked about White Zombie, and Lugosi was in that.
Yes.
You know, and he did a really good job there as well. Like, Lugosi's very talented, and I liked what he did in this for this role. So
yeah, I think he's very talented. Like you said, he did a great job here. And what's cool is, like, I don't know, maybe back then it's because people knew they did horror, so they brought them. So it's kind of a form of typecasting. But It's like, even in typecasting, they have way more range than a lot of other people who've been typecasted of late. You know, like they're not just playing the same character in a new movie. It's a totally different horror movie character, and methodology and style,
Right.
So
Excellent. So, what would you rate this? How many wooden body parts would you give this out of 5?
out of 5, I'm going to go with 4 and an elbow.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the more I talked about it, the more I liked this one. And I enjoy this one more than all the others.
Okay.
How about you? How many wooden body parts?
I was going to give it a 3, but, I think I might up it to 3.5.
Okay.
But I don't know. That's good. I liked it. I definitely liked it better than Bride of Frankenstein. I don't know if I liked it better than the first Frankenstein, but I definitely liked it more than Bride of Frankenstein. I thought it was a very interesting plot. I love the Igor plot. I love that Igor was the main nemesis and he was controlling and manipulating the monster, which, I kind of says, people can be manipulated, right? Like when you tell them they're your friends and stuff like that, and they don't have any other context, they can be manipulated easily.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, no, I think I liked it better than the first one because the murder the monster commits isn't, and the ending is kind of to me.
Mm-hmm. The first one?
Yeah. A lot of the rest of the story is very good. It's just, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But, and in this one, I really enjoyed the reason why it gets a boost. I really enjoyed the fact that the monster was in a coma. He was kind of down, buried with the rest of them, and there was a lot going on that I enjoyed.
I'm glad you brought that up. It was actually, now that you've brought this up, there is one other thing I wanted to ask about. If the monster has been in a coma all these years, who the heck has been doing all the killing?
Yeah, now you're dropping it down to a 4.
So yeah, that's the plot point that really bugged me. I forgot to talk about it during the main discussion.
I didn't even think about it. But you're right. It doesn't make sense. He shouldn't have been in a coma for a long time. Is the problem?
Yeah,
Maybe
maybe his just needed a recharge. His batteries finally died, so he killed a bunch until his batteries were dead.
Right. If they didn't, if they just said it that way, then that'd be fine. But that's not really how they explained it out, right? They explained it basically Frankenstein died and the monster went into a coma.
Yeah, there's our neck cannon.
Yes. Well, you know what? Speaking of neck cannon, I enjoyed the fact that, when he talks about the bolts, he talks about them being hardwired right to the heart, and that it's cosmic rays instead of electric. I don't know. I enjoyed that nonsense.
It's 1939 science,
right? But I liked it. It didn't bother me. Discovery has time crystals now, so
yes,
which apparently are a real thing.
They're
in quantum mechanics. I mean, they're not. I don't think anyone's ever found one. But
I don't have a time crystal necklace
right.
or a ring for my wife. But
so.
Anywho, excellent. So next episode of Warp 5, we are going to have a special guest. We are going to be talking about the Tholians as a species, and we are going to have author James Swallow on. And we reached out to James, and we wanted to have him on because he had the Tholians in his last Star Trek Discovery novel, which was the Saru novel. So I thought it would be a good idea to have him on to talk about the Tholians. Now, we're not going to talk about the books very much. They might come up once or twice, but we will primarily be discussing the Tholian Web, Future Tense, and In a Mirror Darkly, if you guys want to rewatch those before the next episode comes along. But talking about neck cannon is not the only thing we've been doing on the network this week, so please take a listen to this clip and see what else you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm. The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
He's like, we can't be vague. And he's like, I'm not doing it. Is that vague enough for you?
Yeah.
That was so great.
I know. Yes, Tyler's having these little quip answers, quick-witted, when he's talking with Georgiou. And she's like, I'm going to trust you, but if you betray my trust, I'm going to hunt you down.
Literary Treks.
And we have the USS Titan, and they're going so far as to make modifications to people's quarters and the different living arrangements to account for various alien physiologies and all that sort of thing. Because not only do we have just a diversity of alien species, we have a diversity of people who aren't even humanoid, which I think is a really cool thing, and something, you can do that in a book at the time more easily than you could on television, for sure. So I think they make really good use of the medium to present us with a crew like this.
Warp 5.
Because he had a near-death experience, he's now all of a sudden upset that T'Pol won't admit her feelings for him.
Right. And now, look, I can understand how the near-death experience triggers that, but the payoff of him asking to leave should have happened 3 episodes from now.
Yes, he should be grown up enough.
Earl Grey.
I mean, of course, the difference with Geordi and Data is that they're regular characters and they're in almost every episode. So there's more of that potential for interaction, and Guinan isn't in it as many. And I know it wouldn't have been as possible at the time, but I can dream about the next generation starting with Guinan being like a regular there every week. I mean, hey, Quark's a bartender and he's a regular on DS9. Why not Guinan?
Exactly.
Let's go back in time and change that.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcast. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating and written review. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select Warp 5. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. Patrick, where can people find you when you're not manipulating me into killing people for you?
When I'm not doing that, I'm usually on Twitter at MagicDrop5. That's a single, no spaces. The 5 is a digit. You can also find me popping up in the Babel Conference, and I can always be found over on the Edge with my good friend Amy Nelson. So, Brandon, where can people find you when you're not taking baths in sulfur pits because you can't smell eggs?
Do you know why I actually do that? I actually have a reason for so frequently being in the sulfur pits.
Oh, and what's that?
I have an excuse for why I always smell like farts. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Mutala. You can find me over on the Babel Conference. You can find me here on the network with Melodic Treks, which is all about the music of Star Trek. And we just recorded episodes 100, and 101 was recorded a little while ago, but 100 will be coming soon. Christopher Jones talked about his 5 favorite tracks, some of his 5 favorite tracks from all the music of Star Trek, so watch for that coming very soon. And you can find me on the Fandom Podcast Network with my friends Chris and Tom, where we talk about Hitchcock films on Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. And Zach Moore from Standard Orbit and myself, we have a podcast called Franchise Fatigue, and we are smack dab in the middle of the Godfather series that we're recording right now with one of our associate producers, Chris Tribuzio. So we're going to be covering all 3 of the Godfather films. And you can find me where else? I think that's pretty much it. Every once in a while, I poke my head up on the Cinematic Sound Radio Network with Breaking the Waves, which is my electronic film score podcast. So I'm a busy guy, but I got a lot of stuff out there, so be sure to check it out.
Awesome. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
At this time, we'd like to thank our wonderful associate producers who choose to support us, and they support Trek FM, and they support Warp 5 in particular. And we have the wonderful Norman C. Lau, Floyd Dorsey, Mike Morrison, Tim Cooper, Justin Ozer, Mark Flessa, Chris Tribuzio, and Jim McMahon. Thank you much Thank you so very much, guys. We truly appreciate it. We couldn't do it without your support because it helps to fund the network, because we've got so many darn shows, and it takes a lot of money to produce all this content for everybody.
That's all we have for you this week, listeners. And remember, you can't be afraid of the wind.